I completely understand what you're saying. There is an extremely dark model that I have been toying around with, not because I'm attracted to these dark models of the phenomenon, but I do believe something is extremely sinister is at play, where our own consciousness has been hijacked by a life form that it's not out here. It's somewhere in here. I would liken it to the Matrix, where you have the construct of reality. Then you have real, it's the reality itself that's creating the construct. Well, what we're looking at is not something that's only affected the construct. It's hacked reality that's creating the construct itself. And so if you and I were actually playing a video game and we had a headset and one person says, "Oh my gosh, I'm seeing something abnormal in this game," we would say, "Okay, it's localized to your headset only. Disconnect and come back on." But if you had, let's say, a million people who are wearing different headsets, perhaps, right? And all of a sudden we're in this interface event and we're in a whole different construct, a whole new reality playing the game, and entities show up that do not belong there. They were not written into the software, my friend. They do not belong. Then you have to go into this conversation of, well, did this phenomenon hack the designer of the game? There's only two possibilities, or more than that, but only two probable possibilities. Either it hacked the designer of the game and went through that avenue to create this, and now that's why it's here, or it's hacked the game itself. It has introduced a novel rendering method that transcends the design of the game. It's alien to us. Now we're interacting with entities, interfacing with beings that should not be here. And in many cases, we see their manifestations as a rendering artifact. They're translucent. Why? Because they're attempting to render into our reality. Because this is exactly why I've stressed in times past. The object, something is really there, but it's seeking to be seen. Why? Because what we're seeing in the field is that once we see that, there's something else that comes through us.
Ooh, oh yeah.
Oh,
Keep going, man.
something else is there. In conventional wisdom would say there should only be one craft we're seeing in the sky. When we're okay, if there's one on camera, there should be one. Right? It's not what we're seeing. What we're really looking at is the presence of two. One is produced by virtue of hijacking consciousness. The other one's there. And I would suggest to everyone that I have been wrong in times past, not 100% wrong in this model, but the question I wrestled with was whether or not what we're seeing from the observer effect is actually real. And, right, which of the entities are real and which one is fake? What if we're confusing the real one with the fake? What if, in fact, the object is there to be to be observed, so that through the observation effect, through that conscious connection, that which is within preconscious can actually manifest into existence? That's the real one. The other one, even though it looks like, right? Oh, no, that's the replica. The real one is the one manifesting by virtue of conscious connection.
How do we know this force isn't creating this infighting amongst us?
That's what I'm trying to tell you, bud. Yes, to where it preserves the mask by not only diversifying itself, by dividing everyone else
Just
from
like
each other.
we divide and conquer here on Earth in human
Yep.
form,
Yep.
how do we know this force, these entities aren't able to divide and rule and conquer this realm within us?
Yep.
But we think we have our own free will, our own free
Mhm.
thoughts, our own free choice, or everything in our heads. That's my thoughts. These are my thoughts. How do we know we're not
Yep.
being divided right now by an
I
outside
think it
influence?
I think it Well, I agree. I agree, brother. I mean, in your mind, imagine the president or whoever the president is if disclosure occurs. What's he going to do? Just go up there and say, okay, by the way, there's a species of NHI present in the earth or on the earth, out in space that come to Earth, and we know they exist. Uh, People are going to be like, well, I don't like that guy. He's wrong. And then you're still going to have the argument, what are they? And even if the president was like, okay, here's what we believe them to be, it's not going to solve anything. Because if we know anything about the phenomenon deceives, it lies. It lies all the time.
So do
It
our
lies in its manner.
politicians. That's why I'm not going to
Exactly
believe
right.
a damn thing
It's
they say,
just,
man. Because
and it's like, yeah, but who's responsible for these mythologies? Is it just, a byproduct of human ingenuity? No, it's the phenomenon, right? Veiling its function by manifesting another form. And so it will allow you to believe, sure, I'm a fairy, sure, I'm a djinn. And what ends up happening, and this is a trap many people fall into, where if I come around and say, listen, I don't believe that is what you're calling it, specifically within their folklore and demonology, they believe somehow I've undermined and disrespected their religion because they don't realize that they've tied their entire worldview into their interpretation of this particular phenomenon. So thereby disagreeing with that, even just by interpreting it liberally or something, now I've got to respond emotionally. I've got to attack you. You are an enemy of the faith. And it goes from every religion I know, and it's okay, but really, what is the phenomenon? Forget about the form, look at the function. What is it doing? What is it doing? Because if ufologists say, okay, these are UFOs, it's no different, right? And then you get into hauntology, well, these are ghosts. No, if we look at the base nature of this intelligence, it really can shapeshift into whatever it wants to be. It can project a physiological construct.
welcome to Beyond Forbidden. Today on the show, I got a brother from another mother, Nathaniel Gillis. He's back on. Welcome, my brother. How you been, man?
Thanks for having me on, man. I've been good. Been good. Just been preparing. 2026 is going to be, it's stacking out to be an interesting year. I have a lecture series I'll be doing in Colombia. So I've got to and I've never done 2-hour lectures
International,
before.
people.
International, yeah. This will be the second country that I'm doing a lecture series in, so I'm pretty excited about that. Who knows, that might even kind of broaden itself into being a lecture tour into North or East, what is it? Not North America, but yeah, to Brazil,
Just don't go to
Southern America is what I meant. Yeah.
just don't go to Venezuela. So
Yeah. Well,
don't
it's
get
gonna be a
don't get on one of those boats. Those little small fast boats.
oh yeah. Oh my gosh. I'll be out there like it's Nathaniel. I'm like, I don't care.
He's too close to the truth. Boom. Push a button.
And they'll go around and be like, well, Nathaniel, again, we realized who he was, but right, they'll paint me as some kind of terrorist or something. Well, we didn't like him. No, but it could turn into a South America tour. It's interesting. And I'm excited about it. I I will be drinking a lot of coffee, because the most I've done in terms of a lecture would be an hour 10. These would be two-hour sessions. One, I think it's on Saturday, and the other one on Sunday. I'm excited about it. I love the Colombian culture. I especially the food. My ex is Colombian, and I kid you not, brother. When we first started dating, and I visited her in Rhode Island, I probably gained about 30 pounds because the food was just incredible and it was nonstop. And anyway, so I'm excited about that. And then I have a conference I'll be lecturing at, which I can't go into because the details aren't released yet, but it'll be a conference I'll be lecturing at in March. So 2026 is stacking up to be an interesting year. I'm excited. And what's perhaps most interesting to me about all of this combined is knowing how this field works and how experiencers respond. I'm going to be releasing more data now. And as this data is released to the public, it kind of conditions experiencers to feel more comfortable with their encounters, in which that will hopefully start convincing people and really like the truth. Like, your stories deserve to be heard. You are not crazy. You are not losing your mind. You are worthy of being considered in the conversation. And that my hope and my desire is that now that some of these cases are being released to the public, it will motivate people and comfort them enough to come forward with their own. So I'm excited about that. I'm still doing the NHI discussions with my colleague and dear friend, Steve Mera. It's on his channel. We have covered, I think, 29 different conversations that originally they were just he and I conversing about our case studies, our research, and I guess a test. Steve released some of it, and, people are just responding really positively about it. It's amazing, it's a good feeling, but I'm just excited as to where the field is going because these conversations are relevant, they're germane, and a good friend of mine said that this is post paradigm research. We've had Jacques Vallée, we've had John Keel, we've had a bunch of the greats, the goats in the field. But we've had that for 30 plus years. And so one thing that Steve and I have been doing as of late is considering all of the data, considering these different aspects and approaches to the research, but also sitting down and saying, okay, is it possible that we're dealing with the singular intelligence? If it is possible, it's probable at this point, then what we're seeing is that, like, within the research of one field, there's a question that arises, a why or a how. And then what we're realizing is that we'll go into another field of research, and that field actually holds the answer to a question that came from a completely different field. So where demonology has a question, ufology will produce the answer, or even vice versa. And so I think one of the reasons why this phenomenon has diversified itself is because it wants to create a distance between the question and the answer. Not realizing that, yes, if we're able to answer this question, if we're able to produce these cases and actually look at the mechanics, the function, not the form, then perhaps that answer will spill over into ufology, hauntology, and the larger phenomenon as a whole. But within the framework of disclosure, there are two factions that are fighting over it. And I'm aware of a person who wrote a book on a faction within our own government who are studying the demonic or occult connections to ufology. First book went over pretty well. His lectures were amazing. I'm hearing from his own voice, his own mouth, and his own social media posts that the sequel to that book is being suppressed. I believe he said, I've tried to publish it with 6 or 7 of the publishers I've been working with. He's been working with for 30 years. And none of them will publish the sequel. Now, again, if this was just Nathaniel Gillis, right, and it's not. This is a guy that's been in the field for 30 plus years, and he's known to write a book and publish a book every 8 minutes. He's a prolific and it's systematic writer, author. And yet the sequel to this book is being suppressed for one reason or another. Now, one theory is that it's being suppressed because of the utter collapse of civilization this data would cause.
Does everybody know who he's talking about? It's somebody I have interviewed face to face many a times. So anyways, go ahead, man.
One of my favorites. I met him at a conference here in Ohio about 12 years ago now. Amazing, amazing writer. Well, again, one of the theories is that, okay, if we did disclose the actual conclusions of the Collins elite or the latest research being done, latest in terms of in the last 30 years, not the last 52, right? Nah, because I'm convinced they're not going to release anything they're doing today. But even then, for some reason, it's not being published. Nobody wants to touch it. Again, and I stress this point, if it was just anybody, if it's just a regular Joe Blow who that happened to, it wouldn't matter. It would kind of make sense, you know. But if you're talking about somebody who has a great relationship with his publishers, next thing you know, the last thing I heard was, yeah, for some reason, nobody wants to touch it. Now, again, getting back to why that would be the case. Jin Bam, who's very much tied to the intelligence community and has an inroad into their knowledge of what's going on, is kind of suggesting that they will not disclose the phenomenon. They will not disclose what it is, what they feel it is, its capabilities. And I think it was James Landoli that had interviewed him and he asked him why. And Jim Sineban said, because it's indigestible. It would collapse civilization. It would cause our species to question everything and question things that were never previously questioned. You know, when people like to hypothesize, well, it's all horns and hooves, that's everything, you know, and that's all it represents, then we have an issue with the disclosure movement, because a lot of these people, even though that's the model that represents what we're seeing the most, it seems that it's not representing the phenomenon in its entirety. And so there are boxes that are going unchecked. Abilities, capabilities the phenomenon has, that again, even though that model is the most correct, phenomenon's demonstrating a liberty that we cannot understand outside of their being allowed to do this, or they actually work for someone uh, that is in control of everything. And so within these different models of the phenomenon, one thing has been agreed upon. We cannot tell the public. And so even when we do, and this is fascinating because Pasuka mentioned this a while ago, that even when we do have these congressional hearings, the real whistleblowers are not there. The real ones are behind the scenes.
That don't want any attention. The real experiencers or contactees or whatever, those are the ones that don't come to create a podcast or to, you know what I mean? They're the ones that are afraid to speak out because they have nothing to gain but everything to lose.
Everything to lose, yeah. And I can't even imagine their frustration, because I'm nowhere near their, you know, capability of getting close to this as they are. But they're very much in the know, and they have witnessed the phenomenon. They've witnessed many incarnations and manifestations of it. And so if it isn't the government pushing back on their testimony, it would be the phenomenon, because despite what people would like to believe, the phenomenon is not pro-disclosure. It's not.
Well, everybody thinks disclosure is coming in 2026 with Steven Spielberg's movie. What, and with the billboard, are you ready for everything? Will all things will be disclosed or something like that? And everybody's getting, you know, almost like a fat kid in a candy store. I'm like, man, it'll probably be a cool movie. You know, Steven Spielberg.
I hope it is. Oh my gosh, Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
But you're not going to get anything no more than you did with the hype of the Age of Disclosure documentary.
No. And a lot of the stuff that, and I know even more about some of their testimonies and actually what happened. And a lot of these people that were even in that documentary suffered a lot, just multiple manifestations in their homes. You know, their families were being attacked, haunted, hunted. So yeah, the real whistleblowers are still stuck within the model of demons versus angels, which it really, I just really want to know what they know. You know, I have to admit that I want to know what they know. But then again, do we? Because people are so pro-disclosure. It's like, well, yeah, disclosure as long as it fits into your worldview, because that's the presupposition. It fits into my worldview. I'm ready for it. What if it doesn't? What if it doesn't fit in any worldviews? What if this intelligence authored our perception of reality? What if it has control over reality? I don't know. These are just questions that a lot of researchers are entertaining, but I am fully convinced the phenomenon does not want disclosure. We know that by the implants. If they wanted every implant to be seen, they wouldn't implant it. They just put it on the skin instead of inside. We know it by apports. Okay, they're creating physiological constructs that are designed to blend in our reality, not to trigger, right, us to say, okay, there it is. No, they're hiding it from us. They're not just giving it to us. They're hiding it to where it blends into our local environment. That's the antithesis of disclosure, actually. And so if disclosure does take place, it's going to be guided, ultimately inspired by the phenomenon. And I do not believe that our government is in control of that. I mean, to an extent they are, but if the phenomenon wanted to, it would transcend anything and everything they could do. It would just show up. And I think, again, that leads me to believe, no, whatever they are, whatever this is, doesn't really want to be known yet.
And with that documentary, I posted on X back in November. I haven't even watched it yet. It's just a big nothing burger, man. I already know. You know what I mean? It's uh I said disclosure will not come from a documentary because everybody was saying this is it, this is it. Real disclosure will not have to wait for a film to be released. Because I said this before the film was released. Real disclosure will not have to wait for a film to be released. It will take place when people least expect it, and will be so earth shattering that it will sweep across the world almost instantaneously. It will be like a shockwave of news and reports, just like the day of 9/11. You know,
Well, I agree. I agree, brother. I mean, in your mind, imagine the president or whoever the president is if disclosure occurs. What's he going to do? Just go up there and say, okay, by the way, there's a species of NHI present in the earth or on the earth, out in space that come to earth. And we know they exist. Uh, People are going to be like, well, I don't like that guy. He's wrong. And then you're still going to have the argument, what are they? And even if the president was like, okay, here's what we believe them to be, it's not going to solve anything. Because if we know anything about the phenomenon deceives, it lies. It lies all the time.
so do our
Lies
politicians. That's why I'm not going to
exactly
believe a damn thing they say, man. Because
right.
whatever they say, you bet you can bet your ass that they're not going to give us any information without them controlling something, a narrative or whatever agenda, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
I like the real disclosure comes from the people that don't come, or
Yeah.
if it ever does happen, are the ones that are behind the
Mm-hmm.
scenes that don't want to come forward because they have everything to lose, their families, their jobs, their credibility, whatever it is, or they might be afraid, whatever. Those
Yeah.
and you're not going to see. So you're talking about a while ago. Um, I forgot what you said, but it kind of made me think of the representative or whatever. Luna, what's her name? Paula Luna, whatever.
Ana Paulina Luna.
Okay, and this is I bookmarked this a couple days ago, and she's been on these podcasts for months, talking about this. Is Luna Luna suggests the interdimensional beings seen today may tie to the text removed from the Bible, like the Book of Enoch. Non-human entities gave humanity advanced knowledge. There's something out there. I have to be careful, but I can tell you this: they're real. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm I'm like hitting my head against the keyboards or the wall. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
man, this is not new information that her and other people of high stature are coming up with.
It's
Quit
40 years.
quit flocking to these people just
Yeah.
because they're credible because they're in DC in politics. They're on the Joe Rogan podcast. Whoa, yo. How's Joe Rogan do? Whoa. And all the other podcasts like to imitate, Rogan. Like, whoa, really, man? Whoa. And like, they don't go to people like I've had on this show for 15, almost 16 years now, or people like you. They go to it's like, do your homework. Quit looking at these people like they're effing gods just because of their stature in society, and pick up an old book. Go to YouTube, search some of these old podcasts. The information is out there. You know what I mean? Like, buy some old magazines. Like,
Go do real research. Go do real research and get out of
the X sphere.
Yeah.
You know,
Of course, of course. That's really all we have, though. We have noises, but no signals. And I think it's because of that the field has been kind of stagnant for a while. As my friend Paul St. Clair calls it, saturated now. Everybody's covered everything, and there's no new research being done. And what's sad is you're right that even when our Congress men and women are being briefed on this subject, I mean, oh yeah, well, that kind of research was done 35 years ago.
or longer.
And you're just now entertaining that hypothesis. Meanwhile, other researchers are 35, 40 years, and I say that digitally, 35 plus 5, 40 years ahead. Because, some of us are doing this research to get ahead of even the newest work being done. Because, like Steve and I, like we were talking the other day, we have to actually evolve in our research faster than the phenomenon can moderate and monitor. And because it evolves according to our awareness of it. Once we get an idea of what it's doing, it will hide the mechanism. It will veil its function by manifesting another form. Now we're getting into the business of it, but it will veil its function by manifesting another form, and people will chase the form, authoring an entirely new mythology. And not realizing, no, it's the same mechanism. It's the same function. It's a different form. And so what frustrates me and others, my colleagues, is like, okay, yeah, that is a model of phenomenon. Yes, it answers some questions, but it actually opens up more questions than we realize. I mean, if the answer is okay, yeah, there are other entities out there that are somehow connected to the Book of Enoch. Okay, that's interesting. Um, and that's really all it is for me. I'm getting frustrated myself. It's okay, that's cool. I got that book literally in 2004,
That
and I read all about it. But if you're looking for real raw data that says, okay, beyond, and I'm going to say this, I'm not saying it didn't happen, but the correct academic term is called mythology. Outside of the mythology, have you sat down with the phenomenon, right? And actually looked at what it does, how it operates, how it responds? Because at the end of the day, if all we can do is name it, we're done. We're done. Because the phenomenon is just going to produce another image in another form. We're going to be like, well, that has another name too. And so not realizing, no, it's just collapsing itself to different archetypes. And you and we, as a whole, at large, will just be enchanted. And just name it. Just give me a name for it. It's what frustrates me. I get a lot of DMs, emails from people. Just call it gin, Nathaniel. Smokeless fire. Gin. And then other person comes from a different worldview. No. They're plasmoids. They're balls of plasma that are operated by virtue of a mindless, unguided process. They're just flying around.
they're mermaids, they're fairies.
Or they're mermaids. Oh, the fairy lore too. And so what we do again is we have a set of characteristics, right? And then we feel obligated to name it. That's what it is. And then we write, okay, what's in Ireland and Irish lore? Okay, well, let's go to Islam. That's a jinn, obviously. Not realizing that, okay, if all of those are jinn, then we got a problem. Because I have cases right now in front of me where they're turning into actual physical craft. So jinns are now UFOs or jinn UFOs. Not really. So what we're looking at really is something that could take the form of anything it wants to. It diversifies its identity in our eyes. And because we are humans, we base reality upon our vision. We feel obligated to provide agency to it. I'm going to create a mythology surrounding what it is. It really doesn't matter if other cultures have the same manifestation and believe it has a different origin. Mine's right, that's wrong. And it's like, yeah, but who's responsible for these mythologies? Is it just, a byproduct of human ingenuity? No, it's the phenomenon. right? Veiling its function by manifesting another form. And so it will allow you to believe, sure, I'm a fairy, sure, I'm a djinn. In what ends up happening, and this is a trap many people fall into, where if I come around and say, listen, I don't believe that is what you're calling it, specifically within their folklore demonology, they believe somehow I've undermined and disrespected their religion because they don't realize that they have tied their entire worldview into their interpretation of this particular phenomenon. So thereby disagreeing with that, even just by interpreting it liberally or something, now I've got to respond emotionally. I've got to attack you. You are an enemy of the faith. It goes from every religion I know, and it's okay. But really, what is the phenomenon? Forget about the form. Look at the function. What is it doing? What is it doing? Because if ufologists say, okay, these are UFOs, it's no different, right? And then you get into hauntology, well, these are ghosts. No, if we look at the base nature of this intelligence, it really can shapeshift into whatever it wants to be. It can project a physiological construct. I have cases, this is crazy. One right here that and maybe maybe I won't if I ever get to it in my little rambling rant here, where the phenomenon had created a physiological construct of a craft, trained on a craft. And then once it landed and hovered, not really landed, but hovered about 50 feet off the ground, it was a self-illuminating ball of light. That's all it was. So everything else that was perceived by experiencers was potentially non-existent. It was just the phenomenon allowing itself, giving us the illusion of control over what we see. Oh yeah, of course that is what it was. No, it was something completely different. I'm going to throw a wrench in all of this. Getting back to Gary Nolan's case that I'm so fascinated by, of the boy in France, right? He's looking through a sunroof. He sees a craft hovering in the sky. It's massive in scale. His mother then takes a photograph of it with her phone, completely different description, did not match what her son saw at all. Are those two entities in the sky? Because if they are, we're obligated to create two different mythologies about them, right? One is a massive craft and scale. I'm going to go put that on a t-shirt, have a podcast about it. We're going to tell the whole world about something that may or may not even exist. And then the other craft, of course, has its own mythology. Now we're going to actually approach it. I mean, even if we approached it through the scientific method, how is that operating? How is that existing in our environment? So then we create our own scientific method to justify its existence. And then we go home at night and wonder, okay, oh my gosh, which one of those even are real? What are we doing?
It's almost like this intelligence, this force or whatever, is deliberately putting us at a fork in the road. Like those old cartoons, you either go left or right. And they want us to go down this path, breadcrumbs down this to the left path. It could be physical, whatever. To the right, it could be non-physical. Or
do whatever.
It could be many different paths, and it keeps us divided, and it keeps us from. It keeps, but people understand that sometimes you got to kind of dabble into all of it. You know what I mean? Because sometimes, really, we just need to understand that we really don't know what the fuck we're dealing with.
It's transcending.
Well, just like what
90% of the models. Yeah, good.
What I think it is that we've talked about it before. There's something. It's yes, I don't think it's a simulation like a video game or nothing like that. But this reality is so much more beyond our visible light spectrum that we see less than 1% of the visible light spectrum. So what is out there is, you know what I mean? Like these entities could be all around us. And how do we know? Just because we're at the pinnacle of everything when it comes to knowledge and architecture and science and everything else, we think that we know everything. But how do we know that there are things around us, things out there
They're here
that how do we know they don't have the ability to installed another program within this reality or whatever, or within people's conscious minds or whatever. Or, you know what I mean? It's like, how do we know we aren't being steered by this force, by these entities to keep us on the wrong track or to help build this reality for them? They're keeping us on this certain track, and it seems like the certain track we're going right now is AI, transhumanism, and all of that. Why is that? You know, I've told you before. I think it's because they want us to be plugged into whatever this matrix like dystopian reality, because I think it will be more programmable, more hackable, whatever. And what is it that they want? That essence, that spirit, that life force, that soul.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Maybe that will be a way for them to better incarnate into this reality instead of just flipping in and out, you know?
I completely understand what you're saying. There is an extremely dark model that I have been toying around with, not because I'm attracted to these dark models of the phenomenon, but I do believe something is extremely sinister is at play, where our own consciousness has been hijacked by a life form that it's not out here. It's somewhere in here. I would liken it to the Matrix, where you have the construct of reality. Then you have real, it's the reality itself that's creating a construct. Well, what we're looking at is not something that's only affected the construct. It's hacked reality that's creating the construct itself. And so if you and I were actually playing a video game and we had a headset, and one person says, oh my gosh, I'm seeing something abnormal in this game, we would say, okay, it's localized to your headset only. Disconnect and come back on. But if you had, let's say, 1 million people who are wearing different headsets, perhaps, right? And all of a sudden we're in this interface event, and we're in a whole different construct, a whole new reality playing the game, and entities show up that do not belong there. They were not written into the software, my friend. They do not belong. Then you have to go into this conversation of, well, did this phenomenon hack the designer of the game? There's only two possibilities, or more than that, but only two probable possibilities. Either it hacked the designer of the game and went through that avenue to create this, and now that's why it's here, or it's hacked the game itself. It has introduced a novel rendering method that transcends the design of the game. It's alien to us. Now we're interacting with entities, interfacing with beings that should not be here. And in many cases, we see their manifestations as a rendering artifact. They're translucent. Why? Because they're attempting to render into our reality. One thing is for sure, at least in this headset, they don't belong. As a matter of fact, in many headsets, they don't belong. And my point is, that's what I believe the government is trying to stress to us without absolutely destroying consciousness, to make us question, do I even want to be here? Why? Because the more I am here, I mean, guys, if you look at, okay, the book, The Externalization of the Hierarchy, in that book, the author stresses a point that I want to underline here. She said that the old ones, whatever these beings are, will come back into existence by weaponizing consciousness. They will come back as tulpas and egregores, thought forms, which would be the literal hijacking of consciousness. And now I'm getting pumped because this is exactly why I've stressed in times past. The object, something is really there, but it's seeking to be seen. Why? Because what we're seeing in the field is that once we see that, there's something else that comes through us.
Ooh, oh yeah.
Oh,
Keep going, man.
something else is there. In conventional wisdom would say there should only be one craft we're seeing in the sky. When we're okay, if there's one on camera, there should be one. It's not what we're seeing. What we're really looking at is the presence of two. One is produced by virtue of hijacking consciousness. The other one's there. And I would suggest to everyone that I have been wrong in times past, not 100% wrong in this model, but the question I wrestled with was whether or not what we're seeing from the observer effect is actually real. And, right, which of the entities are real and which one is fake? What if we're confusing the real one with the fake? What if, in fact, the object is there to be observed, so that through the observation effects, through that conscious connection, that which is within preconscious can actually manifest into existence? That's the real one. The other one, even though it looks like, right? Oh, no, that's the replica. The real one is the one manifesting by virtue of conscious connection. This seeks to be seen so the other one can be born from within.
But it needs us. It needs, you talking about these thought forms, but it needs us, and it plays tricks on our minds, and it needs us to manifest this into reality.
Mm-hmm.
But why? Because it's just like Monsters Inc. We are energy. We give energy. There's no telling what kind of energy that we are emitting. We can't even really tell. You know what I mean? It's like, to these entities, they're on a whole different playing field, and we may look like a nuclear reactor, each individual to them. So they utilize us, they use our consciousness, they use our energy, and play tricks on it to make us think that we have our own free will when it comes to the phenomena or whatever reality is. And then they play tricks on us to make us go down believing that we're going down a certain path, but really it's them with the controller in the video game. And it's
look here,
and they're using us to project whatever it is that into their reality. You know what I'm saying? If I don't know if I said that right.
Well, no, you're exactly right. This gets back into the video game theory where the flashlight will shine. The fence doesn't exist because it's not seen yet. The flashlight has to shine on the fence to illuminate our vision for us to perceive it. And at that point, it's now existing in the video game. It can be written all at once too, but it's not witnessed. It's not seen. Once it's seen, it changes the variables in our decision making. So what I'm looking at again is, okay, which of these are real? Because one thing is absolutely certain is the phenomenon replicates by version, or by my method of aversion, where it will diversify itself. And we've seen this not only in hauntology, again, I mentioned this in many cases, in many interviews, where, yeah, it's an apparition to us. It's just a ball of light on camera. Now, which one of those is the real and which one of those is the replica? Which one of those are we seeing? Because I was just given a photograph yesterday where in Colombia, a gentleman took a photograph, or someone rather took a photograph behind him. He was standing on a concrete wall, and they took a picture of him just kind of for social media or something. It's a cool picture. But behind him, there is this entity in the sky. Very weird looking shape. And then there are triangulating orbs surrounding it. I said, did you witness anything with your naked eye? Absolutely not. But when he took the photograph, that's what they captured. So my point here is not everything that we see is real. And it just bugs me because what it does is it corners our species into questioning not worldviews, questioning your own vision.
That's kind of where I was also going with that. Like, how do we know if they're able to, again, throughout the centuries, they hide behind different masks or make us think that it's a fairy, a mermaid, a goblin, a djinn, or whatever, and up until this point, how do we know that it's our own free will? It's our own
Yep.
whatever it is of the phenomena Like, how do we know that's our thinking? How do we know that's our thoughts? So if that's the case, then where do we go from there?
So I think that I think they are. I mean, obviously, we do have free will that has been tested. Now, there are times when the phenomenon will hijack that. Stephen Berry have tested that to where the phenomenon told them.
I guess I mean like free will on the thoughts. Like, how do I know what I'm thinking is what I'm thinking? You
Yeah,
know what I mean?
well, you're right. You're right. I completely get where you're coming from. I think that, at least from my perspective, it would be what I've always thought. I mean, if I'm a big chicken wing fan, and everything comes down to food with me, guys. So sorry, no, sorry. If I'm a big ranch guy, and then something's like, I want you to eat. For those who want me to eat blue cheese with hot wings, you are the devil.
I tell my
That's how I know. I would never do that.
I love ranch so much that I joke with my wife, man. I can just dip it a turd in ranch and just eat it, man. Love ranch.
Ranch is amazing. Homemade house-made ranch is to die for.
Oh yeah.
But getting back to this idea again, that I do not believe that they're, at least within the phenomenon, I do not believe that CE5 is self-initiated contact. Because what's ended up happening after these events, these sessions, is the phenomenon will hijack that individual's consciousness. They'll have a hard time breaking off contact. They'll have hitchhiker effects in their homes. And I think that's what's really going on, where some of these entities will really bait the gaze of our species in order to manifest through us. I want to be seen. Once you observe me, I can come into existence. It's just a theory, but it's something worth entertaining. But I'm still kind of toying with this concept of the question, really, the inquiry. Which one is real? Which one is actually, should we actually create mythology about?
Yeah.
Because even in incubi literature, you have these cases of women where the entity's wearing the mask of the husband. And there are many cases where the wife doesn't know it's not the husband. So all of her belief, you guys got to pick up what I'm putting down here. All of her perception of reality regarding him, all of her expectations of the entity are hoisted, anointed, appointed to the mask it's wearing. Everything. Matter of fact, oh yeah, I'm gonna go, like, let me paint this picture clearer for everybody. I'm gonna put the mask on t-shirts. Right? And I'm gonna go around telling everybody that's what the phenomenon wants. Sure, go ahead and do that. Why? Because the division within the mythologies are directly are a direct result, rather, of the phenomenon diversifying itself. And then built in within our species, if you don't believe in my mask, you don't believe in me. What, am I an idiot? See how it goes? How it works? You don't believe in my religion. And again, that's how it operates. And so, and I'll tell you this one with absolute confidence, that our federal government knows that. And the mask, at least the function, is more along of the parasitic model. The problem is we don't have handcuffs large enough to place on the phenomenon to where even if we did disclose its presence, people are going to go say exactly what they should. How do we stop it? The government's going to say, good luck. Like, they can't even stop it from visiting them. Like even Jay Stratton, who was recently in the Age of Disclosure, before Age of Disclosure was even announced as to, like, it was coming out and was going to be released to the public, uh, there was somebody, and I that I followed on Twitter, very, 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 very in the know, should I say. And this individual came out and said, look, they're going to have people on there that are going to be discussing their cases, their experiences. And a lot of their experiences are going to be watered down, because if they actually told the public what they encountered, it would unnerve us. It would be indigestible, as some events happen. One of them has a son that is partially deaf. There was one morning Again, this is when this person was researching the phenomenon with the government. This one morning that they go to wake him up, they could barely wake him up. They thought he was dead. They thought he was in a coma. They didn't know what was going on. They finally wake him up. He's coming to his senses. They notice he has bruises all over his body. And he's tired. That's why he can't really wake up. He didn't get any sleep the night before. Son, why didn't you sleep last night? What happened? They kept me up all night. What do you mean they kept you up all night? Well, there were shrieking shadow figures in my room that were screaming inside of my head.
Mm.
So part of the reason that disclosure will not happen is because they fake, at least. We can't stop them. It's one thing to say, hey, listen, there's a boogeyman out there. Lock your door. No, the boogeyman could be in here whenever it wants to. And it goes after people we love. So whatever we're dealing with, again, it's more along the lines of Keel's ultra-terrestrial model. And people, I do love Keel's work. I do love Valet's work. I think that in order for us to get the real data and actually move forward, we're going to have to think outside of the intellectual coffin, no matter the cost. And it's not going to be enough to, again, pull a book out that was written 25, 30 years ago and throw it up on the board and say, well, that's it. Let's just walk away. We named it. We claimed it. No big deal. No. It's going to take people sitting with the phenomenon. And that's the most controversial thing I'll probably ever say. People are going to, crucify me for it. Fine. I don't care. But it's going to take a lot more than reading literature to get where we want to go. We're going to have to go out there and start interfacing with the phenomenon and ask different questions than we have before.
A Collins Elite 2.0.
Absolutely. 100%. And it's going to have to be an interdisciplinary approach. Ufologists are going to have to go into demonology. Look at this. Forget about the title, right? Forget about the images of Pan that it conjures within the mind, the horns and all that. No, go back, look at the way it functions. If the phenomenon is supporting objects in order to prolong its existence in hauntings, just materializing them, to where like the homeowners never purchased the item, but it just shows up. That's no different than demoniacs regurgitating apported objects out of their body that they never ingested. Same mechanism, different form. Same function, different form. What's it doing? We're forcing it to be removed in order to prolong its existence in this dimension. It has to anchor itself to an object it materializes. So can I suggest that a lot of what we're seeing in materializations are the phenomenon apporting itself and anchoring itself into this dimension? So just throwing that out there. So we have to do this kind of research to get anywhere, because I'll just be very upfront with you. Okay, yeah, it's Nephilim. Great.
Or what if
do for us?
Or what if that's what they tell us? If we have like this quote unquote,
of course,
Collins Elite 2.0, and what if there are a bunch of different forces out there, but the one that's dominating maybe the society, this realm, is in the ones that maybe come through with that new quote unquote Collins Elite 2.0, how do we know they're not deceiving us by telling yes, I was the jinn, I was the fairies, I was the mermaids, I was the whatever, I was the little gray alien. How do we know? How do we discern that? Are we even capable with our evolutionary process of thinking and intellect to even understand that we are being deceived by this phenomenon?
Well, I would suggest it's all of them and none of them. Right. You have the proto-intelligence. It separates something else. Boom. There's a connective tissue between the two. Okay, the spider-tailed viper. Yes. Is it the spider or is it the snake? Well, it's all of them and none of them. It just depends on which incarnation you're looking at. And so my thing here again is just kind of my inner frustration, and forgive me, everybody who's going to watch this and think, okay, Nathaniel's really striking out. I'm not. I think that we have a lot of amazing researchers in the field, and the research that's being done is it's good. I personally just realized about 5 years ago that, oh my gosh, people think that if we just name it something, that's all we have to do.
UAP,
Just
NHI.
yeah, absolutely, yeah. Well, we now know that they're UAP. Great.
We
Well,
evolved a lot
Spider,
over our research. Yeah.
of course, yeah, yeah. We'll just call it Nephilim, and that'll be it. And then someone comes along and says, "Well, maybe that's not right." And then the question becomes, "What? You're not a Christian? See the connection?"
Or
People,
or you still call it UFO? Oh, you're a weirdo. It's UAP now.
yeah, UAP.
It's
Oh,
it.
what are you woo? You're woo?
Yeah.
Or I got accused the other day of because I didn't believe they were of being Islamophobic. See the connection? It's like, what?
How do we know this force isn't creating this infighting amongst us?
That's what I'm trying to tell you, bud. Yes, to where it preserves the mask by not only diversifying itself, by dividing everyone else
Just
from
like
each other.
we divide and conquer here on Earth in human form,
Yeah.
how do we know this force, these entities aren't able to divide and rule and conquer this realm within us? But we think we have our own free will, our own free thoughts, our own free choice, or everything in our heads. That's my thoughts. These are my thoughts. How do we know we're not being divided right now by an outside influence?
I think it plays a major role in this. And again, we're looking at, let me back up and preface that with this. Again, conventional wisdom says, okay, if I'm looking at my friend right here, and then somewhere I kept catch a completely different person on camera, one of you is faking.
Hmm.
Or both are existing. Or it boggles my mind. I just think that I'm just kind of burnt out on the Nephilim research. Not Nephilim research. I think they're amazing people. I love them to death. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying for me, I've read that for 20 years and got me nowhere. Because inevitably, and I'm going to say this, people are going to lose their minds. Sooner or later, what's going to happen is a portion of disclosure will come about. And it most likely will be pushed back. They'll be pushed back on it. People will disagree with it, not because the data is wrong, because they don't want it to be real. They don't want it to be true. But we are going to enter into a scenario where some of the technology that we have been given by the phenomenon, it's the same technology we use every day of our lives. And then it will confront us head on and say, if you don't like the origin, get rid of it. And then people will be like, well, I can't do that. Well, why can't you? Well, because of A, B, and C. And there's going to have to be a conversation that transcends, well, we got forbidden knowledge, right? Because we got makeup from them too. Plenty of people wear makeup that hate fallen angels. So somewhere within this model and all these different models of the phenomenon has to be some intellectual honesty that says, okay, even though I personally believe, yeah, the Nephilim existed, I believe that at least some form are embodied on the earth. That's been necronetics, right? So when people try to corner me and say Nathaniel's saying one thing, no, I'm not. I'm just stressing the importance of real raw data right now. That's what has to happen. We have to, and people are going to say, well, again, Nathaniel's lost his mind. He's a reprobate. I don't really care what people call me, because at the end of the day, somebody's going to have to go out there in the field and test it and say, okay, there are replicated responses on the part of this thing. Like there are things that it does when you wouldn't think it would, or you would actually sometimes you would actually predict its response and it responds accordingly. Not because we're creating the phenomenon, no, because there is some kind of phenomenological architecture present where there are built-in responses to it, to no matter who asks that question, the same response comes. It's not us. It's the thing with, Barry Fitzgerald, Steve Mirror. You line up 10 to 20 different people that all believe they're talking to guides. All of their guides have the same exact response. What's the statistical probability of that happening? Zero. But why did it happen? Because once you get beyond a lot of the manifestations of the archetypes, the phenomenon relies on methodology, not mythology, methodology. It seemed like the slow experiment. I mentioned this in times past too, where, okay, it's a cool manifestation, guys, but let's get real. I don't have enough time, right? Give me the real thing. Well, don't you want the deceased ancestor? I don't want that either, man. Football game's on in about 2 hours. I want the real deal because I'm not falling for it. And then it goes, oh, goes back. Again, you're pushing through the architecture, not believing in the lies, not believing in the mask. What are you really? And then again, because of these historical masks that it has authored throughout history, they've been with us for the longest. This is crazy, even in the skull experiment, the new mask was closer to the source. It was the newest one that they connected to the very last time before it all fell apart. Not the older ones. Why? Because the older ones were no longer believed in. I know you're not my guide. So stop saying you are. The phenomenon was like, oh, crap. So you don't believe that? No, I don't. Well, what do I? Okay, we'll go to the next one. And they went through all of the archetypes, all of them, and then finally sat down with the phenomenon. And what they realized is something that I think our government knows, is that these are constructs that do not exist. They are us giving a term to the mask. I'm just going to name it. If I can name it, I can actually define its intentions with me. No, you can't. And so at the end result of it, again, I mean, it's crazy because what happened was in the skull experiment, they had a spirit team they had contacted. And the spirit team, construct, mask, was at the very end kind of creating a connection between the people in the room and with NHI. And when the phenomenon materialized in the room, it collapsed all the archetypes into one. Why? Because they're all just, it's us. But my point here is that the stages of initiation were determined by the archetypes. Each archetype in the skull experiment represented a stage of initiation. So you can interact with that archetype for 25 minutes or 2 hours. In those 2 hours, you're initiated to another level. And then another archetype comes in to court you, to initiate you. And so for years they did that. And then finally, at the very end of the experiment, they went to the last archetype the phenomenon is inhabiting in modernity. It's the newest one. And that's when they realized, oh no. All of these steps and stairs of archetypal manifestations were all designed to waste time. Oh my God, guys, you guys got to pick up what I'm putting down. To waste time so that the phenomenon can properly create an anchor in this environment, stretch its draconian shadow from that dimension into this dimension. And then when all hell broke loose, they looked at each other and said, disconnect, shut it down, turn the lights on. We got to get out of here. Why? It was all a lie.
That's why I think that, just like kind of what you're saying, that these entities, we'll end things here in just a minute, but these entities throughout time, they masquerade behind different things. But I feel like this force is using us or certain individuals, or maybe everybody collectively, through one way or another, one shape or fashion, to build this realm, this society, this world. How did we really build like our own free will? Maybe some things, yes. But is artificial intelligence, is it really our idea? Or just
Yeah.
like just like we have 18 million Mormons in the world today. Who went to Joseph Smith in New York and told told Joseph Smith to go to this tree, and there's two golden tablets, you know. So did these entities, or these two entities that use one individual to build and shape something into society with
Oh,
18 million Mormons today?
absolutely.
That's what I'm saying. That's one aspect. These two beings went to Joseph Smith, and so how do we know that these beings used an individual, his energy, to bring manifest Mormonism into this world? So how do we know they're not doing the same thing with AI?
It's
That's what I'm
it's
saying.
well,
Like, how do we know this world, this society, this realm? We think we built it, we created it, but actually, this world, this realm is actually in the image and likeness of these entities
yeah, it's
that they use through us to manifest, maybe not everything, but certain things into existence.
oh man, yeah, it's manufacturing a series of events. It's Alexander the Great, where I can't get into the city because the wall is too large and thick. Suddenly, a flying shield zaps with a ball of light. It explodes. Now they have actual access. Oh, we're going to conquer. Well, did you conquer the Alexander? No, but they wanted everybody to believe I did. So again, it's authoring its own mythology, and in many cases, that mythology hides its presence. It just it boggles my mind to how deep and profound it can get. Uh, and I do realize there's a measure of me that's just absolute crazy. I get that. I'm well aware of that. I'm under no illusion of how insane I can sound to people. Whatever. Um, but I just think it's high time that we look through the masks. And again, I'm not saying I don't believe in the Nephilim. I do believe in that. I absolutely embrace that model. I just think there's a difference between knowing what happened 3,000 years ago and knowing what's happening right now in the field. I'm not denying their existence, not denying that that's what we should call. No, I'm just saying that in 2025, and I'm telling you this from my heart because I've had conversations with experiencers who believe in Nephilim, but that doesn't matter to them anymore. You know what matters to them? Okay, what's going on now? How can I stop that? Why? Because they weren't there. So as much value as that could provide to us, it has. It has. Right? Today, it's like, okay, here's love Heiser. I love these researchers, and I love them too. Trust me, I love Heiser to death. He's one of my favorites. I love Messer, especially love Messer. You know, but how can I stop this today? That's where it's at for me. That's where my heart's at. What about today, Nathaniel? What's going on today? And that's where I'm at with it. But I'm confident that whatever we're dealing with is replicating objects within our own local environment. As much as I like to talk about, and obviously I do, as much as I like to talk about cases where you have a craft and you have something else in the sky, and which one of those are real, those are primarily limited to one craft being there and another craft being present as well. But there are also cases, like I have one individual as a minister who was traveling with his wife through Tennessee on vacation. He stops near this beautiful lake. It's in the summertime. The blue sky is reflecting off of the water. It's an enchanting moment, as Doc Holliday would say in Tombstone. An enchanting moment. And they get out of the vehicle. They take a photograph, and about 20 feet above the water, there is a metallic object hovering there. So, what is that? Like I said before, prefacing this entire point, we're used to seeing, okay, yeah, there's one craft on camera and another craft that we see with the naked eye. This thing wanted to look like this one, or this one wanted to look like that. No, no, no. In this case, It looked like a blue sky.
It was a
Just
manifested thought form through the eyes of the observer effect. I don't know.
something. I'm leaning towards that very heavily here, but it looked like our environment, and yet it was not our environment. So we are, again, some of the replications of the phenomenon is being locked down in archives. Like, that's one major data point that the government does not want us to know about, because again, that would add to this the delusion, the illusion, the complete collapse of civilization. Because then we have to start questioning. It's like Joan of Arc. Joan of Arc, what? She's riding on her horse. An angel comes to her. I want you to invade. I'm not even a warrior. You will be. And they began to shape human history from that one moment.
Mm-hmm. That's what I'm saying. Yes, these entities are building this world through us. We are the eyes. We are the force. We are the hands to shape and mold this existence, this realm, this reality through the likeness of these beings, this force. From history up into modern day. AI, whatever, you know.
They are. And it's almost like there are two timelines fighting for control.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because there have been cases where somebody has been divinely inspired to do A, B, and C, and they think that's God or an angel. They do it. Right? Or that something else comes back and it's like, no, 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 but you're way off on that. And then they have to test the spirits. And will it look like an angel?
So again,
I keep
saying, man.
But it's like, somewhere in the maturity, the maturation of the research, we have to stop looking at form and look at function. It didn't look like an angel to me. Okay. What was it? Again, now this gets back into what Fringe mentioned probably about a year or two ago on X, where she's like, I can understand. I don't know. She's just talking about it. She made a point where I think it was, I can understand why a negative entity would want to appear as good. But I wouldn't understand why a good entity would want to appear as bad. Profound.
Mm-hmm.
She's an amazing researcher. She's incredible. And that's what I'm looking at here, is that it's like a fight for a timeline, fighting for humanity, not the planet. Let me say this, and I guess we'll end it. But
yeah,
when people are like, well, they're not a threat because they're not landing on the White House lawn. Well, that's okay. That's like science fiction. If you really understood the phenomenon, it would not have to land on the White House lawn. It could just land inside of the president. People like, well, they're not shooting our craft down or our aircraft down. No, they would just possess the pilot. Come on. Like, they don't even think of these scenarios because, again, many people are still locked in this binary model. That's aliens, that's demons, that's this, that's that. Not realizing, like, no. There's something else at play here that's manipulating our species. Yeah, man.
But yeah, dude,
fascinating stuff.
Oh man, we keep going down these rabbit holes. But yeah, Nathaniel, my brother from another mother, appreciate it always. Look forward to our next chat, man. Appreciate it.
Thanks, buddy. Me too. For those who want to follow my work, you can go to parasymposia.com. That's my new platform I am creating. It's centered around my research, all of my writings, interviews. I'm going to put a bunch of my lectures on there. The NHI sessions, the NHI discussions that Steve Mayer and I have made throughout the year are going to be also on there. You guys can follow me on Instagram, Nathaniel Gillis. And I thank you for having me on again, buddy. It's always been a pleasure.